Hi everyone, I'm Maimah Karmo, your host, and you're watching Breathe TV, a safe space to come to exhale and breathe and to get support and love in a sacred space as you navigate your breast cancer journey. I have some beautiful guests with me today, Anastasia Stevenson and Kellie Goss. They are amazing women and they both are advocates. One's a previvor and one is a survivor. Before we start talking with them, though, I do want to ground us in a space of being embodied with the conversation. And so we're going to ask you all to join us in creating a sacred circle as we start this conversation. So I'm going to ask you to breathe with me. You can put your hands on your chest like this or on your belly, whatever is most comfortable. And we're going to just breathe. We're going to take 4 deep breaths in and out and ground ourselves with love and with peace and with healing and sisterhood. Thank you. So Anastasia, you are a breast cancer survivor, thriver warrior. Can you share with our viewers your story?
Yeah, absolutely. I was diagnosed with breast cancer February 22nd, 2019 at the age of 33. I was a mom to twin daughters, Kennedy and Aaliyah, who at the time were 4, and my son, Corey Jr., who was 7. I'm married. My husband is Army. It wasn't on our radar at all. I didn't find out about my history in my family of breast cancer until I was literally filling out the family history paperwork in the doctor's office. Another grounding and another opportunity for me just to pull myself back together and to make the determination to fight. Right. I endured 16 rounds of chemotherapy, 28 rounds of radiation, a double lateral mastectomy, and a hysterectomy. Opted for reconstruction surgery. And so it's been a road. It's been a very hard road.
Wow, that's a lot to go through. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Kellie, you are a previvor and an advocate. Can you share with our viewers your story, what a previvor is and what you do as an advocate being a previvor?
Yeah, thank you all so much for having me again. Again, my name is Kellie. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm an Army veteran, and most notably, I am a previvor. And so, as a previvor, I've never had cancer myself. My mother has had breast cancer twice, and my younger sister has also had breast cancer. My primary care physician asked me, based on my mother's history of breast cancer, whether or not I want to be genetically screened. And he showed with me all the paperwork and gave me everything. And I was like, oh, it sounds like a good idea. That's the Angelina Jolie test, right? And he's like, yeah, this will give you a good opportunity to see exactly where you are, what you need to do, and kind of help you to take a proactive approach. And so he gave me all the paperwork. And 5 years later, so I'm embarrassed to even say that, right? 5 years later, I had another appointment. And this physician was a little bit more persuasive. And she actually would not really let me leave the appointment until I got genetically screened. And so I'm so grateful for that moment because it was just a trajectory that really changed the course of my life, but in all the best ways. And so I found out during the genetic screening that I had an 80% chance of getting breast cancer and an 85% chance of getting ovarian cancer. And so when I received those results, I was in the office and I was just crying. And I felt so bad about crying because it's just numbers, right? So I was like feeling so self-conscious about it. But I think that knowing what those numbers were, knowing what the probability is, the likelihood of me having cancer within my lifetime was just so jarring. With my mother being a breast cancer survivor, I always felt like, I had a fear of getting breast cancer. So I knew it was somehow lurking. I always kind of felt that hovering. But to actually see the numbers somehow made it seem more real. And so I just tried to pull myself together. Kellie, this isn't a, prognosis, is not a diagnosis, pull it together. And, the whole time she's passing me tissues, I'm embarrassed. But the truth is, her persuasive encouragement was just the push that I needed to really make a difference in my life. Because once I had the surgeries, just like Anastasia, I too had a bilateral mastectomy. And I had a hysterectomy, and I had them both in the same day. But once I had the surgeries, then I was able to finally breathe because I wasn't waiting any longer. I felt like I took a proactive approach, and it certainly has made all the difference in how I navigate this space.
I'm really proud that you were proactive. Worse than losing your breast is losing your life. And so it's really important to know that you have to own the outcome that you want to see by taking action, a lot of times. That's why advocacy is so important. But there's so many ways you can advocate, right? There's advocates who may do something like a Heal Day. There's some who might share a story. There's some who may get trained and go back in their communities. So Kellie, how did you pick the kind of breast cancer advocacy that was best for you? And what does that look like for you?
It kind of had a snowball effect for me. I felt that when I looked online, there was no one that looked like me. And so that almost made me feel like the decision wasn't for me. Because if you don't see yourself represented, then you think it's for everyone but you, right? And so for me, that meant stepping out of the shadows. And I know that personally, I was brought up is that, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Don't be out here telling everybody my business. So I didn't openly want to share, but I almost felt compelled to. Like I felt like I was doing everyone else a disservice if I didn't. And so for me, that started out very, very small. I had a small Instagram presence where I would just kind of share my journey. The most important part was just simply owning it myself. And so that started out initially writing in a journal, just kind of feeling all the feelings, getting it all out, expressing to myself that if no one else understands this decision, you're making the best decision for you and your family. Because to be honest with you all, Anastasia and Maimah, not everyone really agreed with what I was doing. And they were very vocal about it. And so I started to feel very conflicted. And, I was even approached with, you're a Christian, where's your faith? If you got cancer, then God will heal you. And so then it made me feel like it was a faith walk and I was missing a message from God. I just really felt so conflicted about the whole thing. And so in the beginning, very early on, I just focused on me. I focused on advocating for myself. And that turned into a larger audience because I felt like I couldn't keep quiet. It almost became like, it's just bubbling up inside of me, and I didn't want anyone else to feel the same way. So that's how it started, and started out initially with the blog, spilled over into Instagram, and now I'm a Tiger Lily advocate, and I'm just really excited to share my story because I really feel like there are people that look like me that are wondering whether or not it's a good decision for them. And maybe the surgeries aren't a good decision, right, for them, right? But it was the best decision for me because people seem to think that the surgeries were extreme. They may be for someone else, but for me, it just seemed like the best decision. But even if you don't get the surgeries like I did, actually genetically screening is what I advocate for, because if you are genetically screened, then you know the probability and the likelihood, and that information arms you with enough to kind of be dangerous, right? Because you get seen more by your doctor, you get surveillance, and that in itself helps. You get ahead of it and allows you to be more proactive. And I think that that's what a lot of us are missing. Like me, like I've lived most of my life waiting for cancer to show up, but at least with the genetic screening, it allows you to be in a more proactive position. So that's what I advocate for. That's what I think is most important. The surgeries may not be for everyone, but genetic screening certainly is.
Yeah, you said so many things that were so powerful, right? I mean, you talked about making a decision that's right for you. And as you said, you began to share your story with your family at first, and there were objections. And, you can pray to God and God can give you, but God also made medicine. He made us to know how to take care of our bodies, so that you can't just sit there and pray and then not eat healthy, not exercise,
Yes.
drink stuff, whatever you want, like terrible things, and eat terrible food, and then lay in the bed and say, well, God's going to heal me. You have to take action, right?
Yes. Faith without works is dead. Yes.
You took the words out of my mouth. Exactly. Anastasia, when you first learned you had breast cancer and were diagnosed, how did you find your voice in the advocacy space?
Yeah, it absolutely took a while. It took me to accept what was happening and then determine what I would do with it. I knew having daughters, it was going to be essential for me to do something to activate, to help them understand, to help other young women understand that our bodies are our own and it's our responsibility to take matters into our own hands. And in order to do that, somebody had to make the first step, right? And just say something that needs to be said. You never know how it's going to land. I think in finding my voice, I found out that, with our faith, God gives us an opportunity to provide a testimony after our test, right? And sometimes during our test. And so it was that conversations with a lot of women who had already endured, had been through, won the battle, and then some of the folks that we lost along the way, right? I think another pivotal moment was coming to the Tiger Lily conference in San Antonio before the world was shut down, right? Being with those women and hearing their stories, it was like a must. You have to do something. You have to activate. You have to educate. You have to open your mouth and say something, right? And so having those opportunities, like you just said, Maimah, to connect, to communicate, and to understand, and also to learn, it's doing a disservice to other women and men, right? Because men get breast cancer too. It was essential for me to activate and find the confidence and trust myself and my voice. And I learned to do that being around all of my breasties, all of my sisters who have been through the fight and are activated because they wouldn't let this thing take them down. It was a must. It was an absolute must.
And I'm so glad you were there for that San Antonio event, because that was the first time in the history of the conference. And they're I think they're 30, 40 year plus conference that they'd ever had that number of Black women together. Remember we walked in the center, we were singing We Are Family and dancing in the entryway, and people were just shook seeing all these beautiful Black women representing, Now that you're more sophisticated and mature advocates, what would you tell somebody who's just starting out? Because some people get overwhelmed. It's too much. So what would you tell someone who wants to get involved in advocacy about how to start and how to balance that with their life, their work, and their healing process?
Yeah, I think I would say, probably three things. One, your voice matters. It's important that we get the confidence around our voice and how, no matter who we are, where we come from, our voice actually matters. The second thing is nobody knows it all day one, right? We have to make a choice to educate, to grow, and to be willing to learn. And the third thing is it's just super important that the experience you have isn't wasted, right? It's critical to give back. So those are the three things that I would say, it all matters at the end of the day. No experience is wasted.
I really appreciate that. Some patients who don't want to go into advocacy feel like they're judged sometimes or under pressure because there are many of us who are so involved. So like you said, it's very personal what you want to do. Advocacy could be just making better choices in your life, right? And living your best life. It doesn't have to be on a grand scale. It could be just loving yourself and loving your family and sharing with them, living more intentionally, living more beautifully, living with more purpose and passion. I want to ask Kellie, as you get more involved in advocacy, sometimes you have to really put in place boundaries. I used to feel guilty a lot for having boundaries for myself, but now I know that if I don't take care of myself and fill up my own cup, then I can't pour into other people. So I have really good boundaries for my morning practice, for spiritual practice and prayer, evening for turning down the lights, reading, taking a bath, having some tea. So how do you two put in place boundaries around advocacy and say yes to yourself? You can start first, Kellie.
To be honest, I am still learning how to balance everything. I think that what you said is a very, very good idea. I should probably practice more of that. That was my plan, to set time aside, to set dedicated, focused time aside for me, and to really do a good job of prioritizing myself. I was doing really well, guys, but everything that I had planned, and I had a routine, my workout routine, the walking the dog and the making the dinner, I was killing it. And then we moved and everything is just kind of haywire again. But I feel the weight of that, because I feel like when I had a rhythm going, in the Army we call it a battle rhythm, right? When I had my battle rhythm going, I felt better about myself. And now I'm taking on more responsibilities to include setting up the new house, and everything is out of whack, and I feel the weight of that. I would say that I was doing well, but now not so much. I need to definitely get back into the habit of that.
Well, life's a flux, Boundaries actually protect us and they help us to be better for others. How are you setting boundaries, Anastasia, in your life around advocacy and also for your self-care and taking care of you?
As far as advocacy is concerned, there are days that I can commit and there are days that I will not. I will not give up anything around my children's schedules. If there's a performance or a football game, it's a no-go. I also have boundaries with full-time work, right? You get me from 8 to 5. After that, unless it's critical, it's a no. And then as far as self-care is concerned, because it's so personal, right? And there's no right or wrong for anyone, right? So for me, my self-care Saturdays, right? I lock myself in my bathroom because that is the only room in my house that is my own. And I do, a facial. I take a bath. I light candles. I have music. It's ambiance. And I just take my time. Sometimes it's 30 minutes. Sometimes it's 4 hours, right? It's whatever feels good for me. And that's me filling my cup so that I can pour from my saucer.
I love that. I do self-care Sundays. And it's funny. When I do that, I'll get up and I'll meditate for hours. Just lay in bed and play meditations and do yoga after that and run a nice warm bath and put essential oils in the bathtub and just play music and just lay there. And it's so good to take care of your body. I love your book that you wrote. It's called The Evolution of Me, Anastasia, From Trial to Triumph Through Breast Cancer. Tell me about the first book and then your son's book and how cool it was to collaborate with your baby on a book.
Oh my goodness, this is gonna make me cry. The Evolution of Me is a really raw rendition of my journey, right? And to just believe that everybody's journey is their own. But I think the evolution goes through sisterhood. It goes through marriage. It talks about all the things that nobody talks about, right? Accepting my body with my scars. Having my husband love me from 100 pounds to 160, right? That chemo and all the things that happen. How important family and sisterhood are, and all of those things and everything that comes with that. Maybe I want to talk to you today. Maybe I don't. Sometimes the blinds are closed, right? But it is truly a very raw story. But I think the behind the scenes of all that is when I was diagnosed, my marriage was rocky. I didn't have a great relationship with my siblings. And I was just kind of at probably what I would call a pit of depression. And then cancer came. And it is absolutely the vehicle that ended up saving my marriage. How crazy is that, right? But the evolution kind of goes through all of those things. And then Corey saw me writing a book and said he wanted to write one too. And I kind of pushed it along because, Kellie, like you said earlier, there's not a lot of us in some of the books and the things that we get when we get on our cancer journeys. And so it was important for him to have his voice out. This was also a way for him to get his feelings out, and this was his outlet in sharing, his experience, but also he was represented, right? There, he's a Black boy that his mom is enduring a very hard time, and how he helped and stood up for me. There's a story in the evolution of Corey calling the ambulance for me. At 7 years old, it scared him to death, but he saved my life, right? And it's a story that had to be told. So collaborating with him, having him tell me what the pictures in his book needed to look like. He was my boss for a little while. It was awesome. It was awesome. I wouldn't take anything for it. And it was also an opportunity for him to learn public speaking, because we've done Fox 2 here in St. Louis. He's done interviews about his book, and it is just so cool to see him grow.
It's just beautiful, really. For so many reasons. He learned to love you even more deeply. He was proud of you enough to share your story. He was just one of your caregivers. He's learning compassion. He's learning vulnerability. He's learning the importance of connection, that mommy is a person too, not just his mom, but you're a person that needs something as well. He's learning selflessness. He's learning the importance of representation. Those things are just things that are immeasurable, right? That you've exposed him to, and that's a testament to you as a mother as well. A lot of women, Black women, don't know that Black women face high disparities, and I talk about this a lot because it's really important. It's always been important, but now we're talking about it more and more because it's even more heightened. That Black women have a 40% higher death rate than their white counterparts. We have to change those statistics. I want to talk about the positives part of this, which is how by you all being educated and empowered advocates, you're now able to address and create change in your communities. Can you share with me, Kellie and then Anastasia, how you're working to end or lower barriers to care and increase health equity in your community?
I think that the first thing that we have to do is to give ourselves grace, right? So I think that first it starts with us. The reason why I think that the numbers are so high is because Black women often don't take the time to take care of ourselves. That's why what you guys are saying about self-care and taking aside these times and prioritizing, all of that stuff is so important, but it's stuff that we rarely do, a lot of times. So that's the first thing, is prioritizing ourselves. And then the second thing I think is knowing that your voice matters. In terms of health equity, we know our bodies better than anyone else, right? And so the first thing is that if something doesn't look right, sound right, feel right, we have to be able to speak up and speak out. And sometimes, again, in our community, we are taught a lot of times, I'll speak for me, I was taught growing up to be seen and not heard. And so a lot of times it is hard for us to speak up and speak out because we have been almost taught coming up to kind of fade to the back, right? Fade the black. And so it's important for us to realize that our voice matters, what you say counts, and no one is going to advocate for you the way that you can. And so that's the way that we balance this health equity, is speaking up loud using the squeaky wheel technique, also taught when we were growing up. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, and just scream until it makes a difference. And that's what we can do. So those two things, I think, number one is making sure that we are giving ourselves the same grace that we extend to others. And secondly is using the squeaky wheel technique and speaking up, speaking out for ourselves as loudly and as often as we can.
Powerful. When you put yourself first, everything else is possible. So putting yourself first before you begin to do the other stuff in the community is really important, because advocacy is a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment. And as it grows, there's a lot of responsibility on you. So just that self-care is so important and intrinsic to being successful. Important. It's so critically important. As you're working to first pour into your own cup and take care of yourself, that enables you to have the strength to do what you want to do in your community. And that community extends to the healthcare system, which, as you know, has a need for great overhaul in many different ways. Anastasia, are you in any way involved in advocating to create change in healthcare systems?
Well, not in healthcare systems in its entirety, but I do have the privilege and the honor of working with a company that is a part of the healthcare system. And in such, we are doing a lot of work around social determinants of health, which is one of the things I kind of put my hand up and say, yes, please, I want to be involved. I know about so much in this space. And so it's important for me to activate and use my voice here. And I think in doing that research with the organization, as well as the research that I've been able to bring back from our foundations, right, Tiger Lily, Pink Angels foundations here in St. Louis, is the divides within certain neighborhoods. What access is available? How are we getting these people who have identified an issue to the doctor, right? And understanding that they may not understand the words that are coming from the doctor. So how do we support those folks in the doctor's offices, right? And so having the ability to contribute to projects and initiatives, right, that are totally focused on the social determinants of health and getting access, education, and all of those tools out to the right people in the right neighborhoods, right? Because we know that in the urban cities, or where we have a very dense population of African American or people of color, they don't have access to the hospitals, right? They don't have transportation to the hospitals. How do we remedy that? We need to have people coming in talking about breast health. We need to have people coming in talking about the right foods to eat and what we need to do in that perspective to get food into homes where there are people that don't have the right income to be able to support healthy living, healthy choices, right? And so activating in those ways in my community is what I've been doing as on my full-time job, as well as as a community advocate.
You two are so vocal about what you're doing, and I have to say though, when you first begin using your voice, it can be really scary because you're putting yourself out there. So for somebody who's watching this right now, who's like, I want to share my story and I want to get my voice out there and make a difference, but I'm scared to do that, What kind of advice would you two give them?
I would say it doesn't have to be perfect for you to open your mouth and say something, right? I think we get caught up so many times, though, I'm not this polished or I don't have this particular background. It does not matter. You have a social media platform, therefore use it. You can type, you can do videos, all of that stuff matters. I mean, all you got to do is start, and you build the confidence, you build the education, you build everything that you need to succeed, and then you connect. You just got to start. Make the decision to say yes.
I love it. What about you, Kellie?
Yeah, I definitely echo that. I love that Anastasia said confidence. Nobody's story is like yours, right? Your story is unique. It's uniquely yours. Nobody can tell it like you. And that's really all people want. They just want to connect with you. And they want to know, what about your story is similar to theirs? How did your story differ? What about your story could help them? And that just requires you being you. You don't need anything extra to do that. I know for me initially it was really difficult because I've never had cancer. So as a Previvor, you're a part of the cancer community, but you're kind of like, you've never had cancer. So it's a little bit difficult for people to really understand, and people don't really even understand what a Previvor is. They know what a survivor is, a thriver, they understand that, but a Previvor, that still requires a level of understanding from a lot of people, right? And you're talking about cancer, but you never had cancer, so it requires a lot of confidence, but not confidence in knowing all the things, but I have enough confidence to share my story. And that is all anyone needs, right? Is just to be willing to share your story in the hopes, the small hope that it can help others.
Beautifully said. What part of advocacy do you enjoy the most, Anastasia?
I think the connection. There's always a person or two that either relates or that can feel my passion for what I'm talking about. And that connection is awesome. There's also the aspect of there's a possibility that something that I say may help someone else. And that's the blessing and the testimony.
It's priceless. What is your one word in how advocacy has changed your life? Anastasia?
Empowered.
Empowered. Thank you. Kellie?
Purpose.
Purpose. I would say my word in the moment as I'm watching both of you is inspired. You both inspire me. It's just inspiring people using their pain for purpose and using their story, to make a difference. So you don't have to wait to have cancer to help other people. You can help even if you haven't had breast cancer. You can still use your voice as a Previvor, as someone who's a human that wants to make a difference for other people. I just really thank you both for being advocates for all you do in the community. You are valued. You are a gem to us. People need you. Your voices are so important for women everywhere and Black community. And so never stop, okay? Keep being you. To all of our viewers who joined us for this beautiful episode about advocacy and the power of community, I hope you were, as always, as inspired as I am by watching these amazing women share their stories and just share how they're making a difference in the world. And the first thing you do if you want to make a difference in the world is just start. Nobody ever starts off knowing everything, but take one step at a time and use your voice, follow your heart, and make an impact. If you help one person, you've made a difference, and that's enough. You can start slow, you can start small, but each act ripples and grows and makes a difference in the world. So just take that one step and you can start today. Thanks so much for joining us, and bye for now.